Hello, and welcome to our lesson on the four-part division of the land of Israel, lesson 2. So we're going to pick up where we left off last time. Last time we had looked at the coastal plain, and we began looking at the central mountainous spine. And today we're going to finish up the central mountainous spine before we move on to the Rift Valley and the Transjordan. We're going to talk about the Jezreel Valley. Now, that name may not ring a bell to you.
This valley is mentioned just a few times in the Old Testament.
Jezreel Valley, but a lot of important biblical events took place there. So it's important, it's biblical, it's just not mentioned by that name. So the Jezreel Valley is the only natural break in the central mountainous spine. As we look north and south along the central mountainous spine, it's all mountains until we get to the Jezreel Valley. Then on the map it all turns green because it's a valley. And so that's very significant. And while this valley seems very broad, seems wide open, like you could enter and exit from anywhere, actually it only has 5 entrances and exits. And the mountains that surround this valley descend very steeply. So there's only certain places you can get in and certain places you can get out. And thus, those entrances and exits are very important, very strategic. We can see on this diagram of the Jezreel Valley, the Jezreel Valley looks like an arrow pointing to the west. The shaft of that arrow would be the Harod Valley. And we're going to talk about these 5 entrances and exits. First off, number 1, we're going to go around clockwise. The first entrance or exit is the Harod Valley, by way of the Harod Valley, which is guarded by the important city of Beit Shan, the B on our map, which is all the way down there in the Jordan Valley. So that guards the entrance coming in from the east. And then as we move along to number 2, there's the Dothan Pass. So there's a narrow break in the mountain range there where you can enter. And then along the southwest edge, there are a couple of entrances. We'll just lump them together. 3A would be the Megiddo Pass, which is guarded by that important site of Megiddo. And then 3B is the Jokneam Pass, where the city of Jokneam is. We move farther along to Kishon Pass. That allows people to come in from the plain of Akko or the plain of Asher into the Jezreel Valley. And it kind of narrows down there at that pass. And it's kind of a tight squeeze in between the 2 sets of mountains. And then as we move all the way around to number 5, which is the plain of Tabor, Mount Tabor, that kind of gumdrop-shaped mountain, very rounded, sits right in the middle of the Jezreel Valley. It's easy to pick out, and it helps you get oriented if you know where it is. And so that would be the 5th entrance or exit in the Jezreel Valley. Well, we talked about Megiddo. Megiddo guards one of those southwest entrances. And so right as you come up, moving north through the Megiddo Pass, right before you open up to the Jezreel Valley, which you see off in the distance, we are looking north in this picture, there's the site of Megiddo, which guards this important entrance. And that's why this site was so important over the years. There are many battles that have been fought there. Let's just go through this list. Thutmose III, Pharaoh of Egypt, fought there back in the 15th century. He even said capturing Megiddo is like capturing 1,000 towns. Joshua fought there against the Canaanites. Pharaoh Shishak fought there against the Israelites. Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria fought there. Josiah, unfortunately, King Josiah was killed there by Pharaoh Necho. Alexander the Great fought there. Saladin versus the Crusaders during the days of the Ottoman Empire. Allenby in World War I fought against the Ottoman Turks there. In the 20th century, during the time of the Arab-Israeli wars, those two sides were fighting for control of Megiddo. And we know in the future the Bible talks about the Battle of Armageddon. And in Hebrew, it's Har Megiddo, the mountain of Megiddo. So the kings of the world will be fighting there in the future at the great day of God. Well, the Jezreel Valley is extremely fertile, especially today. The Israelis have drained it so it's not so swampy. And so the soil is fertile, decent amount of rainfall, so it's very good for agriculture. Well, let's look at a biblical event that took place in the Jezreel Valley way back in the days of the Judges. And this is the Battle of Sisera. Now, Sisera was the general of a Canaanite king by the name of Jabin. And so he fought the Israelites led by Deborah and Barak. And so we see here that they were encamped in the Jezreel Valley. The Canaanites were at Megiddo on the left-hand side, and the Israelites were at Mount Tabor, the foot of Mount Tabor, on the right-hand side, the eastern side. And the battle took place in the middle at the brook or river Kishon. So here's where the Israelites were camped at the foot of Mount Tabor, kind of a nice rounded mountain, or hill sitting there in the middle of the Jezreel Valley. Judges 4:4-5 says, Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. She used to sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the sons of Israel came up to her for judgment. So she was judging. Now she sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali, and said to him, Behold, the Lord, the God of Israel, has commanded, Go and march to Mount Tabor, and take with you 10,000 men from the sons of Naphtali and from the sons of Zebulun. I will draw out to you Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his many troops to the river Kishon, and I will give him into your hand. So God had promised Deborah and Barak victory there in the Jezreel Valley against the Canaanites. So in this slide, we see here, looking from Megiddo, which was the camp of the Canaanites, looking pretty much due east, we see the Kishon River text in blue, and the battle took place kind of right in the center, and then far off in the distance at Mount Tabor was the Israelite camp. And the Israelites were victorious because of God's help in this battle. The region of Samaria is south of the Jezreel Valley and north of the hill country of Judah. And don't confuse the region of Samaria with the city of Samaria. They both have the same name, and you have to kind of look at the context to see what the Bible means when it uses the term Samaria. Okay, but right now we're talking about the region of Samaria. A little bit later we'll look at the city of Samaria. And here are some of the capitals that were established by the kings of Israel. Israel split off from Judah in 931. And their first king, Jeroboam, established capitals at Tirzah in the Cisjordan, that is on the west side of the Jordan, and then one capital at Penuel over in the Transjordan. So he could kind of keep an eye on both sides there. And Omri later would move the capital to the city of Samaria because he thought that was a more defensible place. Yes, here we are at Tirzah looking due east out to the Transjordan in the distance and the Jordan Valley. And there's this broad valley that leads up to Tirzah from the Jordan Valley. And you can see, while very pretty, but looking at it from a military standpoint, invading armies could come quite easily up this valley. And Tirzah is kind of a low hill, very difficult to defend. So Omri decided this really wasn't a good idea. And so he wanted to move his capital somewhere else, and he moved it to the site of Tel Samaria. And so that's what happened, moving to the city of Samaria. This is what the Tel looks like, very tall, large Tel with valleys all the way around. 1 Kings 16:24 says, He, Omri, bought the hill Samaria from Shemer for 2 talents of silver. And he built on the hill and named the city which he built Samaria, after the name Shemer, the owner of the hill. And this was a very strategic location. It was easily defensible. Quite high, so one could see out for quite a distance to see one's enemies that might be coming. And the hills leading up to the summit were quite steep, so armies would have a tough time getting up to attack the city walls of Samaria. So that added to its defensibility. And from the summit of Tel Samaria, looking out, you can see the broad valleys surrounding Tel Samaria. So from your outpost on top of the Tel, you could see your enemy coming from kilometers away, and you could get people back into the walled city, close the gate, and be prepared for the enemy coming. So it was a very defensible place. King Ahab had his palace on the summit of Tel Samaria. Now we probably remember his wife better than we do King Ahab. His wife was Jezebel. And so Jezebel and Ahab had their palace there on the summit. Well, let's move a little farther south from Tel Samaria down to the biblical site of Shechem. Very important site. Covenant was renewed there, and it's right at the foot of Mount Gerizim. And so to the north we have Mount Ebal. On top of Mount Ebal were proclaimed the curses of the law, and from Mount Gerizim were pronounced the blessings. So this was a very important site in the days of Joshua. And then several centuries later, about the 2nd century, the Jews fought against the Samaritans at Mount Gerizim. The Samaritans had a temple there, and the Jews destroyed that temple on top of Mount Gerizim. These are some of the steps leading up to that temple on Mount Gerizim.